Good morning, EVA students. It's Thursday, or for American literature, it's Thursday. You know what that means? You have a quiz today. So good luck with that. If you're tuning in, then hopefully, and if you're tuning in, you're an American Lit student, hopefully you're tuning in for the quiz review, which I'm going to do in just a second. But let me get a couple things out of the way first. First off, usually I will be by my computer from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Today is a special exception to that, and I will not be able to respond immediately to emails in that time. So for today only, my office hours will be from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So if you have questions, I will still be checking my phone as frequently as I can, but if you need an immediate response, around 1 to 3 will be the time. So check in for that. Film study students, you're going to continue analyzing the film, looking at lenses and focus. English 2 students, you're going to look at the second half of the poem Gather Ye Rosebuds and just kind of review yesterday's exit ticket. There was a little bit of confusion there. Yeah, I did ask you to do the first 4 questions, and the exit ticket actually did ask you for the first of those 4, because the first question you had was write one sentence in your own words that summarizes the poem's main idea. Now, I paraphrased that question a little bit on the exit ticket, but it was essentially the same question. Hopefully, you wrote the other 3. That'll come into play today, but you are going to answer the other 5, or you're going to answer the other 4 that start with question number 5. And I want you to pay particularly close attention to question number 7. That is the one where it asks you, what do you think the author would say if you interpreted that poem to mean basically you should live as wild and crazy as you want because you only live once? Probably not his main idea, but I'm curious to hear what you say. So put some thought into that. Give me more than just a sentence or two. Like I said, give me some thought. Okay, but this poem, pretty straightforward to give you the answer to number 1. It's basically saying that young people need to make the most of their time because growing old stinks. That's pretty much the poem in a nutshell. But English 2, you have your marching orders. Go ahead and take care of the other 4 questions, and then tomorrow's SSR. So, yeah, 2 weeks down. So make sure you have your SSR book. If you get done reading or get done with an assignment early, as always, go ahead and work with that. So, film studies, English 2 students, you got your marching orders. Have a good day. As always, send me emails with questions, but use good grammar. A couple of y'all learned this yesterday. If you email me with bad grammar, I'm just going to reply it and tell you to fix the grammar. So, good grammar. Remember to capitalize your names on the exit ticket. I'm taking off points if the grammar's not right on these assignments. So just keep that in mind as we continue Eagles View Academy in the online form. American Lit students, let's talk about your quiz. So the quiz is going to be primarily on Thanatopsis and A Psalm of Life. Not so much the parody, but the first one. The parody is a useful tool to help you remember the first one because there are a lot of similarities. But I'm mainly going to be looking at those first 2 poems. So some of the things I might be asking you is for like what ideas are not in a poem. You need to keep in mind the key aspects of romantic poetry. So remember, romantic poetry as a literary time period, it's a time where there's an emphasis on the individual, an emphasis on the common man, an emphasis on nature. A lot of these different things. Now, not all of those necessarily show up in every single romantic poem. If you think back to like The Devil and Tom Walker, which we looked at, there was not really a lot of patriotism in that story, but it did emphasize the mythical and the gothic. So you want to make sure you understand the difference or the different attributes of that literary time period, because I might ask you which ones do and don't come into play. So refer to your romanticism notes for that, but that is definitely something you might want to know for the quiz. I gave you some vocabulary as you were going through these poems, particularly a word that means something about like a tomb. So might want to look up or see if you can remember that word before you go on. I want to ask you about some ideas that you see in Thanatopsis, also some ideas about A Psalm of Life, and then maybe even to see what are some things that they both have in common, because they are both romantic poems, and though they deal with it a little bit differently, they do both tackle some of the same subjects and have some similar ideas in them. So keep that in mind. Yeah, again, make sure you know the romantic elements that are and are not in these poems. So you might see ideas about nature, enlightening man. Maybe there's some focus on the Gothic. Or remember, one of the other ideas is like valuing intuition over feeling. But then on the other hand, maybe there's not a lot of patriotism here. Maybe there's not a big emphasis on legend in this particular one. So keep those in mind as we look through that. Keep in mind main ideas. So Psalm of Life, even its parody, there's an emphasis on certain things and how you can make the most of life. So keep in mind that. Keep in mind the metaphors. Remember, comparison of two things without using like or as. Sometimes it's very overt. You could say something like love is war. And then sometimes it might be a little more subtle. Sometimes, as you can think about, like in the Psalm of Life, he makes reference to footprints in the sand. Well, he doesn't ever tell you exactly what that is, but the implication there, the metaphor there, is the footprints in the sand are actually the legacies of people from the past that have carried over to today. Now, it doesn't always. A metaphor is not always going to be so in your face. It might be more subtle, like that example I just referenced. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind the tone of these poems. Are they optimistic? Are they sad? Are they depressed? Are they scared? Are these poems that are telling you to live every day in fear that you're going to die because it could happen at any moment? Or are these days that are kind of going maybe with a carpe diem message, just seize the day and make the most of life and don't worry about death? Keep these things in mind. There is an essay question at the end of the quiz, so most of the quiz is multiple choice. When you start the quiz, you cannot pause it, and you'll have 25 minutes. So there's a timer. If you run out of time, it's going to stop you wherever you're at. So manage your time wisely. There's 16 multiple choice questions, and then one essay question. Don't skip the essay. Okay, the essay is worth 20 points, but if you skip the essay, aside from the 20 points you'll lose from not doing that, I'm going to deduct another 20 points for just not trying your best. So give it an effort on the essay. Okay? Okay, there we go. So do the essay, multiple choice, manage your time. Like I said, you'll have 25 minutes. You cannot pause this. It's open notes. I have no way to stop you from using your notes. I've asked you to make Google documents so that you have the notes. So use the notes, but don't rely on the notes because you don't have enough time to check your notes for every single question. So study your notes, study the poems, make sure you understand what's there, make sure you understand the questions that you've already completed, and make sure you kind of know enough of it on memory that the notes just become a way to double check your initial instinct. But don't rely on them because you will run out of time if you try that. So keep that in mind. Let me peruse one more time over this quiz that you'll be taking. Make sure I've covered everything that you're going to encounter there in our lessons over the last week. And it looks like we have. So make sure you know your literary terms, personification, metaphor, all that kind of stuff. And American Lit students, you guys have SSR tomorrow too. So feel free to continue reading your book. I'll have another activity built around that, and continue working on your research papers because we're in April now. April 17th is when your first draft is due, and you want to do well on that because it's going to make the last couple weeks of the school year much, much easier if you do a good job on your first draft. So keep that in mind as well. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. So if you have any questions for me and need me to respond immediately, remember today and today only, contact me through email from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., not 9 to 11 like typical. But we will be back on that schedule tomorrow. Good luck on the quiz. Happy Thursday. It is April 2nd, 2020. All right. You have a good day.